Welcome to our discussion on the 2013 Cambodian elections. There's so much to unpack. The surprising strength of the opposition coalition really shook
Indeed.
things up. The shift revealed more about internal party dynamics than just voter numbers.
Absolutely. The performance by the Cambodian National Rescue Party caught everyone off guard, from external observers to the ruling party itself.
Right, if you look at the historical patterns, it's not that the vote distribution was entirely abnormal, it's just that the CPP's grip has clearly shown cracks. It's
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
foundation that once seemed unshakable started to show fissures.
And that brings us to the question, was this a shock result or merely an indication of long-term trends?
Well, when you analyze it, if you combine the national election results and differentiate them from local outcomes, the 2013 numbers actually fit into a predictable pattern. In fact,
True.
some would argue that the 2008 results were the anomaly rather than 2013.
That's interesting. So the opposition's comeback might be seen as a corrective step after 2008?
Exactly. It's like the pendulum swinging back. The CPP had taken advantage of a booming economy in 2008 and used heavy social control tactics, including vote buying and administrative exclusion, to secure their dominance.
Right.
But in 2013, voters who were dissatisfied with the economic downturn and failed reforms started rallying behind a unified opposition voice.
Speaking of social control, the methods that the CPP used, vote buying, surveillance, even intimidation, had been a constant tool. But it seems like these tools lost some of their effectiveness, especially with younger mobile voters.
Absolutely. The traditional approach relied heavily on loyal relationships at the village level. Older, more settled rice farmers who remembered the dark days of the Pol Pot regime could be swayed by fear and the promise of stability, but the new, young electorate, many of whom are urban workers or landless rural youths, just don't buy into that same narrative.
So, do you think the demographic shift is the bone that really cracks the CPP's legacy?
I think it's a big part of it. It's like, imagine trying to control an ever-changing crowd with strategies that worked decades ago. You're bound to see lapses. The fact that in 2013, around 1.5 million young Cambodians became eligible to vote, and they're more literate and connected through social media, means that traditional gatekeeping just doesn't hold the same weight anymore.
Exactly. That leads us to consider the urban versus rural divide, right? Because the CPP's tactics are more effective in localized personal networks in rural areas.
Precisely. National politics and local politics are almost two different beasts here. On the national stage, issues like corruption, economic decline in sectors like the garment industry, and land concessions have hurt the CPP's image. But on a local level, the personal ties and dependency on local development projects still provide the CPP with a strong base, if only in some areas.
I find it fascinating how the local votes, driven by long-standing relationships, contrast with the national mood that's yearning for a change.
Yes, and speaking of change, let's talk about the role of protests and allegations of fraud. Allegations have been a recurring theme since 1998. From ballots tampered with to ghost voters. In 2003, for instance, there were reports of hundreds of thousands of barred voters and ghost registrations.
Exactly, yes.
And remember, in 2013, the opposition managed to unite under a single banner, heightening the impact those irregularities could have had on the overall result.
And that unity, brought together by figures like Sam Rainsy and Kem Sokha, is something that we haven't really seen before in Cambodian elections, right?
Absolutely. The fragmentation of earlier opposition forces meant the votes were split. Now, with a unified front, the combined opposition vote could genuinely challenge the CPP's manipulation. But I should challenge one point here.
Indeed.
Some might argue that uniting disparate groups under a single anti-corruption and nationalist message might gloss over deeper ideological differences.
That's a fair point. It's not like the opposition is magically uniform. There's a spectrum of ideologies even among those united against the CPP. However, in this instance, their shared discontent provided a powerful rallying cry.
Exactly. The circumstances forced them to set aside internal differences in favor of contesting the electoral framework. And, speaking of the framework, the CPP's control over institutions like the National Election Committee has been under constant scrutiny.
Yes, they even ended up agreeing to reform some aspects by ensuring equal representation between the CPP and CNRP on that committee.
Right, that's a significant concession. It suggests that the internal cracks within the CPP's political machine are deepening. Now, when you add external pressure, like China's rebuke of Hun Sen amid protests, it becomes a multidimensional challenge for the ruling regime.
Yeah, exactly. China's involvement is quite intriguing, isn't it? Historically, China supported Hun Sen, yet here they're cautioning him over domestic instability.
Indeed, China's stance appears driven more by self-interest, protecting Chinese investments and maintaining a stable trading environment rather than any advocacy for democracy. It's a balancing act where external forces are subtly influencing internal reforms.
And then there's the economic aspect. The CPP rode a wave of economic boom before 2008, and even in 2008 itself, things were rosy enough to justify their control. But later, the global financial crisis and issues like the stagnating garment industry really hammered that image.
That's right. The economic downturn, especially in urban centers, catalyzed the shift in voter sentiment. It's like the past successes were no guarantee of political immortality.
Yeah, exactly.
The voters began to see economic benefits as uneven and the promise of continued growth as mere rhetoric.
And what about land concessions? That seems to be a particularly messy issue that fuels protest and anger, right?
Oh, absolutely. Land concessions have directly affected local communities, displacing villagers and spurring conflicts over resources. This not only deepens local resistance, but also widens the gap between the center and periphery, areas where the CPP's strategies are increasingly vulnerable.
Indeed. So, taken together, the economic missteps, demographic shifts, and unified opposition create a recipe for political transformation in Cambodia?
That's exactly the picture emerging. Yet, the transition might be gradual. The CPP's traditional strategies of fear-mongering and social control, though deeply embedded, are clearly less effective with modern, more educated, and digitally connected citizens.
Yeah, right. And this ties back to the hallmark of many of these elections, the recurring allegations of fraud and manipulation. Even when these irregularities weren't completely new, their impact was magnified by the opposition's unity.
Right. With united opposition, any irregularity becomes more politically potent. It also opens up debates about the fairness of not just the election, but the entire system, and it challenges the long-standing legitimacy that the CPP had cultivated over decades.
I think it's important to note that despite these cracks, Hun Sen's rule isn't in immediate jeopardy. There's still a formidable state apparatus in place.
True, Hun Sen is likely to stick around, but he may need to rethink the tactics that have served him for so long.
Right, exactly.
There's a possibility we could see a shift towards more negotiated political reforms. Not necessarily a democratic breakthrough, but at least a softening of some earlier authoritarian practices.
And that reconceptualization must navigate not just internal party dissent, but also external pressures, both from Western critics and, interestingly, from China.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balancing act. The CPP's reforms, such as reorganizing state institutions and reluctantly allowing more balanced representation in electoral bodies, could signal a cautious recognition of these shifts.
Yes. So it seems that the aftermath of the 2013 elections has provided both a wake-up call to the CPP and a spark for potential change in Cambodian politics. Would you say that this is the beginning of a broader political transformation in the country?
I think so, though it might be more of a gradual evolution than a sudden revolution. It's like, a crack forming in an old dam. It could widen over time if not properly addressed.
Right, indeed. And the public sentiment must be playing a huge role here. Opinion polls have shown a marked decline in satisfaction over the period following the 2013 election.
Exactly. That drop in public satisfaction reflects a growing awareness that there's room for political criticism and, ultimately, change. It's as if, over time, the fear that once held sway is being replaced by a willingness to speak
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. To wrap it up, while the 2013 elections might not have been a complete overthrow of the CPP's hegemony, they certainly exposed inherent vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities, whether from internal factionalism, economic missteps, or shifting demographics, indicate that Cambodian politics may be in for some transformative times.
Exactly. It's a pivotal moment, a clear sign that even a long dominant regime must adapt if it wants to maintain control. The coming years will really tell us if these pressures can lead to substantial political reform or if the CPP will double down on its
No doubt about it.
historical methods.
Thanks for the engaging discussion on these complexities in Cambodia's political landscape.
Thank you. It was quite a deep dive into how elections can reveal both historical patterns and emerging new dynamics.